the future. It's
The Scirens.
It's the Scirens. Do we need to say hi again to everyone? Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
We'll do an official introduction, yes?
Okay.
Let's do it. You start.
No,
Hi.
you're always first.
Yeah, Tamara, it's your turn. You do it.
Hey, everyone. I am Tamara.
Hello, everybody. I'm Gia.
And I'm Taryn.
And we are the Scirens, and we are so glad that you are tuning into our chat as we all make it together through this crazy Corona time and try and bring some science, some STEM to you, a little bit of inspiration and creativity.
Curiosity and creativity in a time of Corona.
Yes.
I am obsessed with alliteration, so of course, if I can use like all the C words, it's great.
Get
Not that
cooperation
C word.
in there. Oh, no, not that
Yeah.
one.
Not that one.
That's reserved for
For special evil
viruses.
Yes.
Speaking of C words, yes. Speaking of C words, you may also hear the voice of a child occasionally. She is being incredibly respectful, but occasionally she might pop in. She's out in the backyard right now, so if you hear, no, it's because she's learning how to play baseball.
That's awesome.
It's family time. Yep. We'll try not to swear.
Yes.
Family time.
And maybe our cats will also.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
here we go.
Those C words.
Which just brings it back around. Sorry.
What I do.
Oh, next. All right. What's everybody thinking about this week? Who's got something to talk about? Who's been reading something besides how to properly shop at the grocery store these days?
I know, that was fascinating. I realize I am not shopping properly. I'm not going I've been social, like completely isolating, but my husband does go out, and I don't think he takes all your precautions. So I have to relay them. I know friends who are leaving their food out in sunlight for a while, thinking that the UV light will sort of destroy viruses. But I think that the time on that the intensity isn't strong enough for that.
No, you still have a time scale too.
Yeah.
Yeah, from everything I've read, and I am not a doctor, this is not official advice, I'm not a scientist, I just like them. It's not so much about sunlight because you've got to destroy the lipid layer of the virus, and that's why soap is so effective because that's what it normally does anyway.
Yep.
But it is a time thing. So part of the reason they say that if you can bring in, the virus can only survive for so long on paper and cardboard and metal. So depending on the surface, and each surface has a different time. If you can put it in a quarantined area, like somewhere in your yard where temperature isn't going to affect it, and then bring it in, ostensibly the virus should be gone.
Right. And I found it interesting that copper had the lowest time duration that it survived on. It was like 2 hours on copper, and it was like 10 hours on aluminum. And then plastic, it was 2 to 3 days that it could survive.
Wow.
Interesting.
Cardboard was, I think, around 12 hours.
Yeah.
But copper was the most destructive surface to it. And I had a copper sink, and now I'm like, it was antiviral. I had no idea.
Who knew?
All I knew is it oxidized so much, and I constantly be scrubbing it with lemon to like make it look pretty. And then a day later, it'd be like, I look like poo. I'm like,
That's so annoying. Oh, we have been going to the store together because, when Denny had surgery, it was on the very last day that there was any elective surgery done, period, because that was when, that was Tuesday of last week, so a full week ago.
Okay, wait, hold on. For those of you listening, let's let them in. Denny.
Oh, yes, Denny
is Gia's partner.
Yes, he is my fiance.
Partner, boyfriend, fiance, what do you guys call each other these days?
Yeah, we do. We say future husband, future wife.
future
most
spouse.
of the time. Yes, future spouse. But he had his shoulder reconstructed in the time of Corona. And I had to come back to the house because there was, unfortunately, like Tamara's having some issues in our apartment that they're selling the building. They had to come in and do an inspection. And I was like, why are you coming in my house? We're in lockdown. Are you insane? And so I had to leave the hospital, come back, follow someone around with Clorox so I could get rid of anything they touched. By the time I got back to the hospital, they had already closed down the hospital to visitors, and they weren't even going to let me back in.
Oh, wow.
And of course I lost my lid. And so now I'm paranoid, but I'm convinced that somehow if I get separated from him, there's going to be like, oh, anything south of Ventura Boulevard is now no longer habitable, and you're stuck, and he can't even shower because he has one arm. And I'm like, so anyway, it's as if we weren't already attached at the hip.
Codependence in a time of
Corona. Corona codependence.
Yeah.
Yeah, Corona too. That's true. So, but we have been wiping everything down with the alcohol, which I think has been useful and quick, and washing and showering. But it is like a whole routine. And to be able to have the time and the ability to do it is, I mean, I suppose everybody has the time at the moment, quote unquote. But it's a process.
Well, not that. I mean, I was reading a whole thread on Twitter last night about an ER doc who was kind of explaining his ritual. And, I mean, he's working crazy, crazy hours. And then he gets home and his wife meets him with clothes. He literally strips down outside of his apartment. I mean, I think he keeps on his skivvies, but that's about it. But he said it's okay because everybody in the building knows what he's doing. And they put them in a thing and they throw them into the wash. I mean,
That's
it's intense.
Colombia, right?
I
survived Ebola.
Yes.
I read his thread literally right before I went to bed last night, and then laid. And it's it's akin to kind of the Italian threads, the doctors that you were reading, where it's just, they were just basically working, one case after another, and it just respiratory shutdown, and you're like reading this, and you're like, this isn't some, removed circumstance in northern Lombardy in Italy. This is Columbia University Hospital in New York City. And we have a president who's telling people that they're going to be going back to work because we need to spur the economy. And you have this doctor who survived an infection of Ebola when he was working in Africa to be on the front lines here and work these 12, 13-hour shifts of just, hell and not having enough supplies, and then, walking the streets that are empty. And anyway, I couldn't sleep, of course, for about an hour. And usually I can fall asleep right away. And I'm lying there being like, oh my God.
Yeah, I had a similar thing, but we'll definitely put his Twitter feed in the notes because I think it's a good read right now. But speaking of doctors and medicine, Taryn, so you found something that caught your attention.
Speaking of alcohol.
1 a.m.
Ooh, it really is a Taryn post. I love it.
No, because I know about the liver.
About the liver.
Yeah, weird. It's so random, but it's so cool because I was thinking about, I'm like, okay, what do I want to talk about today? And I was thinking about how everybody, a lot of people that I know at least, they're like, okay, I'm running out of wine. How am I going to get more, got to drink my way through this quarantine, and everybody's having copious amounts of wine. And I just thought, I'm like, well, kind of it's compromising our immune system if we're overindulging in the alcohol, because we need to be able to, have a robust immune system during this time. But where's my glass of wine? But then remembered this article I read in New York Times about the liver, and I'm going to pull it up. And it's so fascinating. I did a bit of a deep dive into the liver a while ago when I sometimes suffer from exhaustion. Maybe some doctors have said, autoimmune issues. I know autoimmune issues are much more prevalent these days in women, and it's very stress related. But I've had sort of elevated ANAs before in my past where they thought I had lupus. And I've just always done a really deep dive into my body. And I think that right now is such an interesting time for us to sort of explore really what's going on in our body and our health, and maybe educate ourselves a little bit more on it. And so the article is called "The Blob That Runs the Body," and it's almost 3 years ago in the New York Times. Where's my sharing?
There we go.
What a fun title.
I know, I'm going up to it. Oh, it's quite there we are.
There we go.
Cool illustration too.
The body. And I love that they started with the etymology of the word liver, because I'm obsessed with researching meanings and historical roots of words. And in the ancient Greek times, it was, and even Egyptian times, it was thought as the seat of your soul, and that it had to do with hedonism. And so your liver was really sort of a very sensual organ. There had even been on where is it? I pulled up another, this is another article, a link within it. And it said, the king during Elizabethan times was the liver of his country.
Wow.
Ooh.
So I was like, this is just so interesting. But it goes through, this article is so interesting because it really shows, it speaks to how the liver is the second most important organ in the body, in that it processes the second most sort of information than the brain does. And you also have the hepatocytes, which are the liver cells, which actually have 8 pairs of DNA in them, not 2. And
What?
they don't, yes, it's a really interesting structure. And so they process a whole lot more blood. But the article goes into sort of how the liver isn't just this alcohol processing organ. It's really integral to the whole system and health of our body, yet it's the only organ that we don't have an artificial way to keep healthy. There's no iron lung, there's no pacemaker, but it's, something that also regenerates. It's our only organ that from a tiny little section of it can fully regenerate.
I'm so curious if that has to do with the DNA.
Yes, it does. That's what they think. They haven't fully proved it yet, but they assume because it can maintain these 8 sets of pairs of chromosomes without having any cancer issues. So there's not a replication issue, which is often what, if you have duplicating cells, you would get into. And so, yeah, I was just like, this is such a fascinating organ of our body that we just kind of chalk up to, a healthy liver, whether you drink too much or not, but it has all these other elements that it's responsible for in the body. And it also has two different bloodstreams. So there's like the bloodstream that comes from the stomach, and I'm trying to remember where it was. It holds 13% of the body's supply at any given time, blood supply.
Wow.
Which is
Wow.
like, it's quite a lot for only 6 inches long. And during fetal development, blood cells are born in the liver, and then that task later migrates to bone marrow, but it starts in the liver initially.
Wow.
Wow. I have to admit, I don't really think about my liver. It's not like there are many parts of my body I think about, but the liver is not really something I think about too often.
It's so
And
fun.
now you might.
Yeah.
A bit more.
Yeah.
I have a girlfriend at yoga who did a liver cleanse, which I think is kind of the only time anybody ever talks about their liver other than having cirrhosis. And I know that they're all ridiculous, like drinking Coca-Cola and olive oil and paprika isn't going to clean your liver out at all. There's no such thing as a detox. But it's interesting how she was taking it from a very sort of holistic point of view, obviously. And she said she was really putting all this energy to thinking about her liver and like envisioning it and massaging it and talking to it and, sort of doing, like I said, a holistic approach, which reminds me, I ended up watching that Medicine Woman documentary from PBS.
For the doctor?
And one of the things that, they really hammered home, the documentary, yes, follows sort of the history, the very brief life of Susan LaFlèche. She was only 50 when she died. And then it follows her legacy through these other Native American doctors now, these women. And that, for example, there's a Navajo woman, and the Navajo can't touch the dead because that's a sacred body and you don't desecrate it. And she had to do autopsies, and so these people were forced to be completely bicultural because they had to operate in their world and in the white world. But one of the things the Navajo woman was talking about was how Navajo medicine looks at the whole person, and that she still believes, even though she's a medical doctor, that there is this additional healing that comes from the practice of her people. And I think that sort of idea of, at a minimum, of like acknowledging, like, I do have a liver. Wow. What does it do?
And it's on your right side.
Oh, I'm on the wrong side altogether.
Yeah, it's on your right side, right above your spleen and below your stomach, on the right side.
Interesting.
Right? Is it right below your lungs?
So yeah, it must be. I mean, that's just what I read in the article, but I want to do more of a deep dive on that. I'm going to stop the share. But it also says that your liver shrinks and grows by 40% over a 24-hour period based on circadian rhythms. So I was like, what? I know.
Does it also release hormones then?
Yes. So I was like, what is the connection there for hormone? Because you always just think more of the pituitary gland and, you know, for
thyroid.
hormones. But yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But no, it's very reactive to it as well.
Fascinating.
Well, I
beat that, kids. No.
Not a goddess, but I would say I didn't go for something related to blood. However, I did go for something that people think of as blood red, which is I went to Mars this week.
Oh, cool.
Mars for this episode. Yeah. So how's that for a reach for a transition? I tried to make it happen. I don't think it worked. However, yeah, my piece was all about the InSight lander, which is currently on the Martian surface, and it is sending back all kinds of scientific information. But there has been, and it's been really, really successful. However, I'm going to share my screen and bring up my piece. There has been one, hold on a moment. Let me exit full screen so I can find the thing I want to share with you all. There has been one issue that has been problematic, which is something that is affectionately known as the mole, which is an instrument that they are using to dig into the actual surface of Mars and go down, ideally 15 feet. Can you all see that?
Oh, yeah. That's the mole that we're looking at? Oh no, we've turned her into a robot.
Tamara sounds like a robot.
Yeah, that is the mole you are looking for. So it's supposed to go all the way down there into the soil, 15 feet, so that it can pause for a second. Oh no, am I back? Oh wait, am I back?
So close to being back.
Am I back? Can you hear me yet?
I don't have a video yet, but I have your voice.
Yep, got your voice too.
So
and sort of video.
Oh, you're moving.
Yep.
Okay, you have my voice. Okay, now? Good? Now? Sort of?
Still hearing you.
No video.
Okay, I'm gonna stop my video and restart it, which shouldn't stop our recording, and let me see if that does it, since restarting it, and hopefully I'll just start with a quick bite and hopefully we can edit.
Yep.
All right, let's see if that restarts it. Okay, audio still going, checking that. Am I back?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So I pulled up the article, and here you can see right there is our mole, and ideally the mole is supposed to go down 15 feet because the whole goal of the mole is to take the temperature of the planet of Mars and not be affected by the seasons. So it's to go down that deep so that, you know, as the seasons change, as surface temperatures change, it's not recording that temperature. And the problem is it got down a little bit and it's been stuck. So it's like half buried, and they have been trying to figure out for a year what they can do. And of course, you know, there's a slight delay between when they give a rover directions and when the rover carries it out. So they have to be careful with that. And it's very, very delicate. You know, you're dealing with something no one has ever seen before. So they've tried all different kinds of things, and they reported on the NASA InSight Twitter, which if you're not following, you might want to. I have to give a total shout out to the NASA social team. They do an amazing job with all of the Twitter feeds for all the different rovers. They give them all different personalities. They use a lot of humor. So I highly recommend checking it out at NASA InSight. A bit of good news, our new approach of using the robotic arm to push the mole appears to be working. So they're going to continue that approach over the next couple of weeks so that they can really try to get the mole where it's supposed to be. But one of the things that I thought was so interesting about this was that they think that part of the problem was actually the soil. So when they built the mole, they built it so that thinking that it was going to be in dirt, in soil that was basically like sand, which as something kind of goes up and down and up and down, and it sort of works like a jackhammer to go deeper and deeper, the sand falls away. You know, like if you think about being on a beach and digging through that sand, it kind of falls away off your fingers. And what they think is happening is that it's actually more dirt-like than sand-like, and dirt sticks together and clumps around. So it's not giving it enough friction to dig. So that seems to be the problem. They're hoping this will be a fix. And we will hope to find some more good news. But I love the fact that they have been so patient, solution after solution, just trying to figure it out. And so sending good thoughts, and it was nice to see some good news coming from the team.
Yeah.
What's the name of the new rover that they just revealed a couple weeks ago?
Perseverance.
Right.
Perseverance.
It looks, it's so exciting, like seeing it, it's just such a feat of science and art looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Super excited.
That's
yeah,
cool.
I was lucky enough to be on site at JPL when Curiosity first landed. And so I've been a little obsessed with the rovers ever since.
That's awesome.
I love the fact that they have.
No, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, all I was going to say was I love the fact that they've anthropomorphized them so that they do each sort of seem like these creatures that we're rooting for.
Yep, they're true rovers. Man's best smartest friend. Alien smartest friend.
Alien smartest. Yeah. Do you think all of these NASA folks are working remotely? Can they do that, or do they have to actually be inside of the JPL walls in order to issue commands?
That's a very good question.
Is a very good question that we'll tag them and find out.
Come on, JPL, we got friends over there.
Yeah, sure, we can find out.
Right on.
Well, I know that there's a lot of, there's a lot of people in post-production, like especially virtual VFX post-producers who are having to get, and game producers, where it's like the IP is so protected. And it's on like, specific servers and like the leak of any of that kind of, especially for gamers. So they're having to do these, figure out ways that they can get it rerouted to home, but then protected, or just have like a few people work at one time, in a location, but then that doesn't seem very safe when it comes to the spread. Yeah. So yeah, that kind of work is definitely going to be hit hard.
Yeah. But you know what? If we can, I don't know, I just feel like if we can get a rover to dig for stuff and send us information on a planet far, far away, we can figure things out here.
Gaming VFX.
That certainly was the message in Cosmos, right? Like if these Polynesians can venture out with no nails, no metal tools whatsoever over this enormous span, surely we can do this. There's 2 more episodes of Cosmos out, by the way.
That's right. Yeah, Gia's talking, just to, again, like make sure everyone's included in the conversation. Gia is talking about the new season of Cosmos, which launched a couple of weeks ago. And it's technically the 4th installment, right? Third. It's technically the 3rd installment. So there's the original from way back when. There's the season that was out about 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Several years ago. And now this is technically considered the 3rd season. I don't know. The last week feels like it was a year, so my sense of time is.
But we should give, I know one of my heroes is Andrew, and who is Carl Sagan's wife, and an amazing scientist and science communicator of her own right. And she has written, produced, and directed the new season. And I know our friend Cara Santa Maria, who just had her 300th episode of her podcast. The 300th episode is an interview with Anne.
With Andrew. Oh, that's so cool. Yeah.
Nice.
So we'll put a link to that on our show notes as well, because I still have to listen to it. I'm really excited.
That's cool.
Gia, what caught your eye?
Oh, I've been thinking about acting. So I'm on the other spectrum altogether. Do either of you know about the Greater Good magazine that comes out of Berkeley? It has to do with mindfulness research and the science of happiness.
I've seen their website. but I've never seen the magazine.
It is so awesome. I mean, it is the website is the magazine, I suppose, but I'm going to screen share with you so you can see this one. So they are fantastic for a number of reasons, and there's a lot of resources right now about how to sort of prepare yourself mentally for everything, and suggestions on how to have a more meaningful life and to find happiness in small things and all those sorts of coping mechanisms. So this is a great resource for anybody right now. This is an article from earlier in the year that I had pinned because I thought it was so interesting. Why imitation is at the heart of being human. And you know, we were reflecting yesterday, I don't think on the record, but talking about how when they talk about essential services, how artists don't really ever appear in those essential services, and how it's very easy to start feeling like you don't have any meaning to the work that you do, because literally if we all stopped doing what we were doing, yeah, we'd all be bored and we wouldn't have Netflix to watch. But you know, it's hard not to feel like what I do is really worthless ultimately. And yet at the same time, there is this idea of what is it to be human, and being human is this idea of imitation. So one of the pieces in the article that I really liked was the idea that we shouldn't have been called Homo sapiens, man the knower, was Homo imitans, man the imitator, because what are actors doing but imitating what those situations would be like if they were real situations. And I think about babies copying, and they were talking about chimpanzees and human child learning, and the differences between them, but also how similar they are. So when they look at the differences between little kids, and then by the time you're like 6 or 7, that you are less likely to be precisely copying the actions of another person, especially if they're impractical, for example, because all you're doing is just imitating. Um, and that this all builds into a bigger concept, which, yes, you could take it sort of in a statist way, in a bad way, of following leadership without question and just continuing to imitate regardless of whether or not you think it's a rational thing to do. But there's also something called cumulative culture, which is what anthropologists believe is the long-term development of skills and technologies over generations. So for example, it really made me think about that economics essay, which I'm sure you know about, Taryn, the I-pencil essay. Do you know
I
about
don't
this
think I've
one?
read it. No.
Oh, I will, I'll include it in the links too. So it's this very famous essay. I don't remember when it was written. I want to say in like the 50s. But basically it says, like, there's no one person in the world who can make me. My wood is sourced here. The graphite is from there. This person and
Oh,
their paint supplies paint the blah, blah, blah. You know, TK.
yes, I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah. And so it made me think about this, that if cumulative culture is these collective skills that come together to assemble our tools, right, then essentially acting or performance, any kind of cultural art, is also cumulative culture, because it's the reflection of the societal tools that we've accumulated. And it just really got me thinking in that way, that yes, maybe it isn't such a tangible thing as, you know, saving lives in an emergency room, but obviously for cultural purposes, that it doesn't have to be a zero-sum game, that we can still have, we can believe that being human and imitating and doing the things that are human, and that continuing to tell the stories about being human, are essential, just maybe not at this particular moment. So anyway, that's why I liked this little article.
I would say, though, I would put out there, though, this idea that as we are all dealing with, you know, this situation, it is the stories that are captivating us and that are motivating us to take action, which, again, very different than like the amazing hero doctor, you know, who's in the ER and she is working all night. That's a very different thing. Or quite frankly, the delivery person who is helping to keep people supplied and, you know, putting themselves out there, which we're all incredibly grateful for. The cleaning folks who are, you know, making sure that all the stores are, you know, wiped down. Like, there are a million people right now who are doing and taking actions to make sure that everyone stays safe. But I do think there is a need for the stories around all of this that kind of unites everybody, and that in some ways, I think what I'm trying to work my way to is the idea of empathy, and how necessary empathy is right now, because if we're all staying inside for the greater good, then we need to be empathetic towards one another, and storytelling, I really think, goes a long way towards that.
Yeah.
fascinating. I will get the link to this from the show notes, but I was listening to Yuval Harari, the Israeli historian and futurist who wrote *Sapiens* and *Homo Deus* and 21 Lessons for a 21st Century, a deep dive interview with Chris Anderson from TED. And he was talking about how what differentiates human beings from the rest of the animal kingdom is our ability to large scale cooperate while being flexible. So large scale cooperation can exist, amongst bee populations and ant populations, yet exactly, but they're not flexible. They can't just suddenly have higher cognition, be like, let's kill the queen bee and decide that we're going to be like a egalitarian society or something. They are set in their roles. And then other animals can have smaller cooperation with flexibility, like dolphins per se, but they can't coordinate again across a large network. They have like their small little pods. And the thing that allows us as human beings to be able to then coordinate across these vast networks of strangers is a shared story. So, I won't go in, this could be another topic for another day, because it was sort of jumps on from his TED Talk to more of a deep dive interview, and and this is something I've been, as you both know, like thinking about for a long time, of like our lack of story that gives us information to move into the future, that there is a serious dearth of sort of socially connective stories that we can all, there's the story of religion is gone, the story of liberal, capitalism is dying, the fascist story is gone, the communist story is gone, and this is something that Harari gets into a lot, a shared narrative that we don't have anymore. But I think that as artists, our training was to understand and codify empathy. We know how to become a character. We know how to take someone else's experience and step into it and understand it. And I think that that's where our value can come in this moment of time too.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you all for hanging out with us and joining this conversation. Definitely leave your thoughts, your comments below. We want to know what you're thinking about, what you're curious about, and what's caught your eye in this crazy, crazy time. Ladies, it has been a pleasure as always.
As always.
Indeed.
Okay, talk to you soon.
All right, see you later, ladies.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.